and that is that you are worth it. You are worth the best. But sometimes people pick the wrong thing to be. Hey, Brandon, can you check? Oh, someone's calling, I think. Our guest today is going to be talking about the forest fires. I'm not sure if that's her on the line, and how we can actually prevent these forest fires, which is going to be some incredible information. But anyway, I just wanted to introduce myself and let you know a little bit about what I do. I look at the whole picture and all the different things that could influence your health. Is that our guest, Brandon? Yeah? Okay. We got Margot on the line. I'm pretty excited about that because this woman and her team are definitely have been added to my hero list because of what she's doing. Because when we are talking about forest fires and the devastation that's happening, it's huge. And the thing is, things are not getting any better. And to even have any kind of a concept of a solution to at least slow the process down, because the way it is right now, I don't know, what the future lies. It's very scary on the future of our forests, and we need those forests because they create oxygen for our atmosphere that we need to breathe, right? That's one of those things that's on the list of you need to have to survive. And
That's right.
that's right. All right, Margot. Hey, hey, how you doing? I am
Doing good.
all right. I am so happy to have you on the show today. And it's Margaret Robbins, correct? Is your full name?
Yes.
Yes. And I even went to YouTube to try to see if I could like make sure that I say the name of your tribe correctly, but I'm still afraid that I'm gonna like mess it up. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what about your tribe and your position that you have at the tribe, so we can kind of get to know a little bit about you.
So I am a Yurok tribal member.
You're so you say Yurok, like
Yurok.
Yurok. Okay.
Yes. And we are the largest tribe in California.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we are. So we are in very northern California, up on the Klamath River near the Oregon border.
Where it's
And
beautiful.
oh yes, it's very, very beautiful. So I'm not actually, I don't actually work for the tribe. We have started a nonprofit organization called the Cultural Fire Management Council, and our goal is to restore fire as a land management tool on the Yurok ancestral territory, which is actually much bigger than our reservation.
And when you say that, Margot, I mean, it's like you're going to use fire to help solve the problem. And it probably people are like, wait, did I just hear right? And she say they're actually going to use fire to prevent the fires. And that is what is like so exciting about what we're going to talk about today, everyone. And I just can't wait to share this concept with you on what Margot is working on with her nonprofit. And so go ahead and so this is the Cultural Fire Management Council is the nonprofit that you guys have created. And what made you want to even get this started? Because just pulling together a nonprofit and doing things within your nonprofit, that's a lot of work. That takes a lot.
Yeah,
You must have been motivated by something.
right. It is a lot of work. So what motivated us is that our whole culture is tied to the land. And one of those pieces of our culture is baskets. We're actually, Yuroks are known worldwide for our basket weaving. Some of our baskets that we weave are actually watertight. We use them to cook with.
Wow.
So the frame of the baskets are made with hazel sticks, and hazel has to be burnt before we can use it. If it's not burnt on a regular cycle, it just turns into big bushes, and you can't really use it to make baskets. So it needs to be burnt before we can pick the sticks. Also, one of the colors that we use, white, is made with bear grass, and that also needs to be burnt before we can use it in our basket. So they are fire
I never
dependent.
would guess that you have to like burn the wood before you can weave a basket.
Because what happens for the hazel sticks when we burn them, then they grow new shoots that come straight up out of the ground. So we need those long single shoots for the frame of our basket, because then we wrap the roots around those sticks. And we use baskets from birth to death. When our babies are born, they're put into a 10-day baby basket, a carrier. We use baskets to cook with, to eat with as bowls. We use them to lift up prayer. We use them to catch eels. We use them as burden baskets to pack acorns and, back in the day, wood. We've used them as plates. So we use them for a lot of things. Also, there's other benefits from using the fire as well that our culture depends on. In our ceremonies, the animals, some of the animals that we use, which retain their spirit and dance with us during ceremonies. Some of those animals, like woodpeckers and deer, they need habitat to grow and be healthy and raise their families. And so when we are cleaning and restoring the land, we are creating habitat for those animals that we depend on for food and ceremony.
And you say clean the land. You're talking about like a forest area that's like with trees and dense with all different kinds of vegetation?
Right. Well, mostly we are burning the brush. When we used to burn on a large landscape level, our land used to be about 75% prairie, and now those prairies have shrunken down to be only 5% of what they used to be. And so when they used to burn the prairies on an annual basis to keep those trees back and keep those prairies open. So when we burn now, we try to limit tree mortality, and mostly we're just burning to get rid of the brush at this point to make it so that sunlight reaches the forest floor, so that animals can move around on the land, and so that it promotes new growth.
Well, I just like to take a moment to like put some numbers out there, because I found a really good article that gave some of the latest statistics, Margot. And they said that we have actually, climate change since 1980 has doubled the amount of acres burned in the western United States. And this is all being attributed to climate change. And I was surprised that they said that the change in the temperature in the forest has went up 2.5 degrees. And when I read that, I thought, wow, that just shows you just how delicate of a balance that we have. Because that 2.5 degrees, what it did was it took the moisture out of the air. And so the warm air wants to have moisture, and so it's pulling the moisture from the plants, which makes them drier, of course. And then, so that's adding to the risk of the forest fire. And then the other thing they said that was contributing was the fact that we're so busy putting out all these fires that the areas that haven't been burned, we treat it like, oh, we have to save that right there, just, save that forest just the way it is. And so they've just like left the forest to just go. I want you to explain to everyone what happens when we do that, when we save the forest. Are we really saving the forest? So I'm going to let you explain all that.
Yeah.
And then also the cost. Just last year, Margot, we spent, the federal government spent $2.1 billion fighting fires. 2.1 billion. Um,
Wow.
that was just last year, and that didn't include the grasslands area. Like you were talking about, the prairies and the grasslands, those are burning
Right.
too. And so that wasn't even factored into the stats that we had, the double in the past 30 years, the amount of forest fires.
Right.
And they said that the fires are spreading to places that they have not burned in thousands of years. So this is all like extremely upsetting because those forests play such a key role in the balance of our planet, our air that we breathe, and so many other things. And I feel like this is what I'm so anxious to hear you talk about because I want to understand it more myself. I want to know what's really happening here from your perspective because all the time we just hear from our mainstream news and their opinion. But I want to hear
Uh-huh.
from your perspective on how you view what's going on right now with the forest and how we have to accept where we're at right now with climate change. We're hoping to start doing things that reverse it, of which you guys are actually doing things that could help with that as well. And then just kind of take us through, like how your approach is on how we deal with this situation
Uh-huh.
versus how mainstream forest rangers and firefighters are dealing with it. So I'm going to just kind of let you have the floor and you can explain all that to us.
Okay. Well, I think that people for a lot of years have had the mistaken idea that when they first came to this country and saw what the land looked like, that they thought it was that way naturally. But that's not the case. We have been tending the land for thousands and thousands of years, and we've been tending it with fire. And so the park-like landscapes that they encountered were not because we left the land untouched. In fact, it's just the opposite. We were in tune with the land, and we knew what it required. And one of the things that it requires is fire. Fire is restoration. And we didn't set all of it on fire. Sometimes lightning would come down and start the fire on the mountaintops, and then it would come down the mountain. But in other places, we would purposely go out and put fire on the ground to take care of it. And so,
How does that
so
work? How does the fire take care of the land?
well, it burns up the brush, and so that the land doesn't get choked out with brush, and now it's also being choked out with invasive plant species that would not normally be there. It keeps the prairies open because the prairies are constantly being infringed on by fir trees and other kinds of trees. So if you burn those prairies annually, those new seedlings that are coming up on the edges, it kills those. And so the trees stay in their place and the prairie maintains itself. It also reproduces healthy food forage for animals, and people used to also forage from the grasslands. And so when the Europeans came and they saw the land and how rich the resources were, they treated the resources as something to be exploited. And so they would iron out, just wipe out whole forests of redwood trees or fir trees or whatever it was, to the point where people in government became a little alarmed, and they started to set aside the parks and the Forest Service land and Bureau of Land Management and some protected areas. And in those protected areas, they said, well, that some of the places are just hands off. Some of it is still, even though it's public land, it's still treated as a source of income, like on the Forest Service. And so that mentality of take the resources is not totally gone. Even in the protected areas, they're allowing things on there, timber harvest and other uses of resources that are not in the best interest of a balanced ecosystem. But that's what we're dealing with today.
Well, I think you made a really good point, Margot. First of all, how humans will behave when we have no policies or rules or laws. And it's just kind of like take for myself, everything I can grab and take for free. And I think that, the fact that they saw that that's the way things were going at some point in our history and took steps to create these policies. But I did have a conversation earlier, and there are about another policy, because I think I mentioned to you that in San Bernardino Mountains, Nestle has been able to come, and last year they took 36 million gallons of water and paid $524. And so I asked someone from the Department of Agriculture, how do we stop this? How are they able to even do that? It's unfathomable. And he said it's because of laws that were written 100 years ago that says that they can't stop them. He said that the reason that they don't stop them is because they can't, because of a law that was written 100 years ago and passed 100 years ago, and that the only way we're going to be able to stop that is to write a new law. And so, these policies are so important. There's another law written in 1875 that's allowing the very thing that you were talking about, where they're coming on the land and mining the federal lands and I would just really like to know what kind of deals are going on here, because I think these rangers should be fired. They are not negotiators. They are not trained in how to put together these deals that they're putting together, and people are applying this 1875 law. They apply to use the federal lands, and they're letting them come in and develop them and mine them and do all these things, and the corporations pocket the profit and the American people get nothing. Somebody's getting something. That's right. That ranger that allowed that to go on for decades, with Nestle paying practically nothing for all those millions of gallons of water, went to work for Nestle after he retired from being a forest ranger. So I think that kind of tells you that must have been part of the promise. We'll put you on the payroll after you retire, and you'll get a nice hefty check. Make sure that we keep getting this deal. Don't let anyone else in.
I'm sure that goes on more often than we know. I think that also that it's just that they're not really informed of what really does make a healthy, balanced ecosystem.
You're right. You're right on that. I definitely feel that's true.
Part of it. And it's taken, centuries, but they're finally starting to realize that the Native people do have some knowledge that they might want to listen to. The Forest Service is beginning to very slowly change the way they are approaching land management in terms of fire. They are realizing that prescribed burns are healthy and necessary, and they are starting to do that to some degree, not nearly as much as we need. If they would give even 10% or even 1% of the money that they spend on fighting fire to organizations such as ours to do prescribed burns, it would go so much further.
I would much rather give all those millions of dollars to you, Margot, and let you guys cut loose and do what you want to do. But not just that, but train other people. Because why don't you tell people what you've been doing in your nonprofit since you guys started? Kind of give us a recap on what you guys, since you got your nonprofit started, what kind of things have you guys been doing?
Well, we have been very fortunate in being introduced to the Nature Conservancy, And the Nature Conservancy has this wonderful prescribed burn training program. They call it TREX. It's a training exchange. And what they do is that they have been coming up and not just to us, but lots and lots of different places, and to do the prescribed burning.
So
And
they
so
get
they
it.
have,
You're saying the Nature Conservancy totally gets it.
oh yeah, the Nature Conservancy. They're just amazing in how far ahead of the curve they are in taking care of the land compared to government agencies. So what they do is they come in and they will provide us like with a burn boss that's hired up from, we've been working with Firestorm out of Chico. And so they'll bring a burn boss and a couple of engines and a couple of other people in the higher levels of in the fire world. And then we put out notice to people all across the United States that we're doing a training exchange on prescribed burn.
It's kind of hard to hear you, Margot. Did you?
Over 20, 30, 40 people coming in from across the
Margot, I can't hardly hear you. Is the phone farther away?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go. That's much better.
Okay.
I was
And
losing
so
you. I was losing you there.
Oh,
Sorry, I had to. I was like, I want to hear every word you have to say. I didn't want to miss any of them, so I had to like tell you. Okay, so I'm sorry. Where did I
Okay.
interrupt you?
So we have been having a training exchange once or twice a year up on our Yurok.
I can't hear you again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can. So I don't know why it drifts off like that, but
Oh, huh.
yeah, it just like it all of a sudden you got like farther away. But anyway, we'll go with it. So go ahead, and you're doing trainings right now?
Okay, that's right. And so it is experiential training. So people will come from across the United States. Even one guy came from Spain. And they are all increasing their qualifications and knowledge about how to do prescribed burns. So if you have never done any burning before, you come in and you do it in class. It's called Basic 32. And so we have had 15 local people trained up in Basic 32, and then they go out onto the fire and they get experiential burning. They start out as a firefighter 2. If you come in as a firefighter 2, then you're up in your qualifications to a firefighter 1. And if you came in as that, then you're up in your qualifications to the next higher up place. So everybody that comes in is training to increase their qualifications and learning more. We've had the neighboring tribe next to us. He got qualified as burn boss, which is the highest one you can be. He can actually write the burn plans. We've had a local Yurok tribal guy. He's a firing boss and now training to be burn boss. So we're continuing to build not only the qualifications of local people, but other people come in from across the nation to come help us burn. And so we are not only getting rid of the brush, but we are increasing our cultural assets, the health of our cultural assets, and we share what it is that the people are doing when they come in. We'll do some cultural sharing with them so that they realize that they're doing much more than just burning brush, that what they're doing is they're allowing us to continue the culture of our people.
Well, I tell you, the more that you explain to me what you're doing, the more I'm loving you. It's just like it's because you're doing all the right things. I mean, I just think all of these things are so important. I love culture. I love the idea of people kind of rediscovering their culture and their heritage, and because these things, that like you said, the Indians were taking care of the land for hundreds of years before the Europeans came here, because and you learned from all those hundreds of years of taking care of the land. There were things that you learned that are invaluable because there's no way you can create that situation. And the thought of losing that knowledge is extremely disturbing, because I just feel like there's already been so much knowledge that's been lost.
Right.
And just the things, and there's so many things in people's culture that we don't realize are so important. I mean, I know it's kind of a stupid example, but the Mexicans eat like rice and beans together, which is a perfect protein. It's not perfect apart, but it's perfect together. And they just know to do that, to have beans and rice at the same meal. And
Uh-huh.
and you were talking about how you guys gather acorns and what were some of the other foods that you guys eat there from the
Well,
land?
there's wild potatoes, and there's berries, and there's medicine plants, and then there's, like deer that we get, and salmon, and it's all tied to the health of the land, which is tied to fire.
And you guys control that land so you don't have all these toxic inputs coming into. That's what you have been doing, but you're saying, that just like what's happening in North Dakota right now, they're trying to use this eminent domain corporation. This is like extremely scary to me. When we're allowing corporations to use eminent domain, and maybe they're saying, oh, this is in the interest of national security, this friggin' pipeline. I don't think so, because we should be going away from oil. We shouldn't be
Right.
investing billions in oil. If we invested billions in green energy, which I just read a statistic, 50% globally of the energy came from green energy. Isn't that exciting?
Wow.
I know. I was just like, yes. I know Germany is like almost like at 100%. And of course, these oil companies, they want to keep perpetuating this use of oil. So they have to justify, we spent billions of dollars. Now we've got to go justify spending, producing all this oil to justify the billions of dollars we just spent on the pipeline, right?
Right, exactly.
It's like they're creating a situation where then they have to justify their existence. Like, I know Miami-Dade County just got like $7 million to fight Zika, and yeah, they have a lot of water in Florida and that, but I talked to the state earlier today about they actually put a press release out about a month and a half ago that, oh, it rained, so now there's standing water, so people, you should remove your standing water. I'm like, wow, they did a public health message. Give them an award, man. They did one press release. you know, it's like, they're getting all this money for pesticides. They're people are having jobs because of it and all that. So they want to keep that pesticide machine working. So they don't want to do the public health messages, because then we don't need the pesticides, and we don't need people to go out and spray the pesticides. So it's like, I had this one guy that built 45 water treatment plants, and he built them underground and put a park on top. And he said that he went to a lot of cities and he lost contracts because he could do it so efficiently that they didn't need all the people that they had before. And so they lost contracts because people making the decision didn't want, these other people to lose their jobs. So
Oh, wow.
I know. So we see that, like, even though we could be doing things better, we're not doing it because of the wrong reasons.
Right.
And it's because we're letting just a small group of people be in charge of these really important decisions. And
Right.
what I love about what you're doing, Margot, is that, you're sitting here, you're telling us, we got people coming from other countries, we got people coming from all over the state. And I'm not surprised, because they were probably just as excited as I was when I found you, because I had said that when I went on a Yosemite tour with the rangers, they actually knew. That ranger told me that the Indians used to burn the floor of the forest, and I thought that totally makes sense. And then
Right.
when I heard, oh my gosh, there's these women that are actually doing it, I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. They're doing what the Indians were doing. That's so fantastic. So, what is the response that you're getting from the people that are coming from your training? What are they taking away from it, Margot?
I have heard them say it's been the highlight of their career.
Really?
That they
Oh, you do?
they
I just got
all
goosebumps.
yeah, these are like seasoned fire people, been in doing fire over 20 years, 20, 30 years. It's like that, it touches their heart to be part of something bigger than themselves, because what we're doing, it's not going to be done in our lifetime. It's going to be a generational thing. And so we're a piece of that, making a difference for generations to come. And it touches your heart.
Well, you know what else I think it is? Is they want to do something to solve the problem or to make it not as bad. And
Right,
you are giving them a tool where they can actually do that.
right, exactly.
And it must feel great. It's like how I feel as a dietitian when I give someone advice that changes their life for the better. And
Right,
they
right.
come back later on and say, "Look, Elaine, I'll never the guy that inspired me, I can still see the whole thing happening because he was like in a wheelchair, walking with a cane, all this stuff and I had him go to a health food store and talk to somebody, and he came back months later and said, Elaine, I threw away my cane today, and it's because of you.
Oh my gosh.
And I was,
Wow.
he had to change, they advised him to change some things in his diet that made that much of a difference. And
Right, right,
I felt so good. I was like, oh my gosh, I changed this guy's life. This is the most incredible feeling.
right.
And that's why I was part of the reason I was inspired to become a dietitian is because I knew I could make a difference in people's lives, and it just feels so good. And I'm sure these firefighters are out there thinking, gosh, this is such an incredible tool. I'm helping, like you said, for generations to come because we love the forest.
Right.
That's the relationship that you start to have with a forest. You can almost feel, to me, it's like you can feel the forest, like it's almost like the forest is wrapping their arms around you with like this healing energy.
Well, it is. All of the plants and animals have a spirit just like us, and we're helping to make them healthy. And as the forest gets healthy, so do we as people. Another benefit of it is that some of the people that come are from government agencies, such as the Forest Service or CAL FIRE will come in. CAL FIRE doesn't participate, but they come to watch to make sure we are doing it in a safe way. And they're starting to learn that this is a safe, efficient way to get the job done. And so they're really coming along, and so that's a big benefit.
Well, help us picture in our mind what happens when you guys do a burn, because I would think that would be a really scary thing, and I think that's one of the reasons I have so much respect for you is kind of taking on that responsibility. It's like a surgeon, or someone like that they pretty much have someone's life in their hands. You have the life of the forest in your hands when you're doing this burn because you don't want it to be out of control.
Right, right. You can't risk that.
Right, and I think that the reason that it's so scary right now, and maybe you can elaborate on this, is because of that buildup on the floor bottom. And I like what they said in this article. What did they call it? They called it like dry fuel, and I thought that was a really good description of what we have done, and that was because we chose to not do the burning, to just leave the forest alone. But so what? First of all, just tell us, kind of help us understand on where the state of our forests right now because of this dry fuel that's laying all over, and then kind of take us through, how you guys do this burning of the
Well,
forest.
hmm on our ancestral territory, there is the CAL FIRE. They have different ratings for the danger, the fire danger on it, and ours has two colors, red and bright orange, which means extreme and very high. So those are the circumstances we're burning in. We work with the best, most professional, knowledgeable people. They're some of the best that there is in the fire world. We work with Firestorm, and they come in, and by the time that they come in, we have the pieces of land selected that we're going to burn based on their cultural value. Maybe they have sticks, maybe acorns, maybe bear grass. Perhaps it's near an elder's home, so we're protecting the elder's home plus restoring resources. And so we will get a crew of young men to go in and put fire line all around the piece of property that we plan on burning. And a fire line is 6 foot wide where you cut all the brush, and then at least 2 feet you scrape it down to the dirt. And so we have this fire line to keep the fire in its place. And then when it comes time to burn, we have a absolute minimum of 20 trained up people who are out there burning with at least one burn boss heading it up. And we have fire engines, no less than 3, with plenty of water, and there's hoses going up the lines. And so it's a professional operation. It's not just people out there burning. It's trained firefighter, NWCG qualified firefighters. Except they're not fighting fire. They're starting fire, and they're keeping it under control. We have to have a burn plan written by the official burn boss, and that's approved by the CAL FIRE. And so they're paying attention to what the moisture in the air is, which direction the wind's going, when the wind is due to change, what the slope of the hill is. All of those factors come into play when they're putting fire on the ground to keep it safe. And they never start at the bottom. You always start at the top, and you're going across, back and forth, burning down the hill. And that's what keeps it under control.
Oh, okay. As I'm listening to you talk, first of all, I remembered what the guy that I was speaking with from the Department of Agriculture, Alan Lampman, and he said that these super hot fires that are burning because of this collection, this dry fuel just like collecting on the forest floor, it's a different kind of fire. It's like so hot that it actually scorches the soil and kills the soil and then the roots in the tree so that the tree dies.
Uh-huh.
How do you explain that to people?
Well, and that's when a prescribed fire is in your prescription. You're writing into it how hot the fire is going to be, how high up the flames are going to be, and all of those things are controlled. So it's not a case of fire racing up the mountain out of control and so hot. It's a very controlled burn.
So you're able to do that even though we have all this dry fuel on the forest floor?
Yes.
Oh, that's super awesome. And then so another thing I was thinking about as I was listening to you is I just recently saw a program about prisoners being the firefighters out there a lot of times, from the prison, prisoners. And they did interview this one man, and it really kind of touched my heart because he talked about, even though they only pay them $2 a day to do that, on how being a firefighter had changed his life for the better, and how it had just given him a sense of purpose in that. And I'm just thinking that maybe some of these prisoners he had been a firefighter for years while he was in prison. And, we're always looking to rehabilitate our people that are getting out of prison, to have them not go back. And I just thought, just like how they have the prisoners taking care of the guide dogs and the dogs that help the disabled,
Right.
in prison, socializing them in that. I was just thinking, this might be something that would be good for some of these prisoners that have been firefighters for a long time to get interested in to
Right.
to pursue when they get out. Um,
Well, it's interesting that you say that because the very first burn that we ever did, it was a 7-acre burn, and CAL FIRE came up to help the Yurok Tribe wildland fire. And CAL FIRE works with an inmate crew out of Alder Point, and so we had about almost 30 guys there in their orange suits helping to hold the fire line.
Oh, were they? Okay. Well, then
Yeah, yeah,
they got some exposure to that. So maybe, later on they could even go through some of the other training, the really good ones,
right,
and go
right.
through some of the other training, and that could be a job for them when they get out. It would just totally change their life, that's for sure. And then the other thing I wanted you to talk about is what you're doing with the carbon credits. Can you explain that to us? Because I know that you have been you maintain you're maintaining the forest, and that's pretty important, huh? Because the forest is what helps keep our atmosphere balanced and puts oxygen in there. Uh,
Right.
and that's why they have. So I guess I'm not very knowledgeable at all on this carbon credit program and how that whole thing works. So maybe you could explain that because I think that's pretty interesting about what you
I have
guys
a
are doing.
very rudimentary understanding of the carbon credits. The tribe does have a lot of land invested into carbon credits that you have to, they measure how much carbon credits that they have, and they have to maintain that amount, and it brings them income. And with that income, they support different tribal programs such as elders programs, education, different things like that. A piece of that also comes out to help the tribe's wildland fire department do the prescribed burns with us, and it also goes into the natural resource forestry department. And so the carbon credit program is making a difference in how the tribe is able to operate. It also is somewhat sometimes a little problematic in when we want to choose which lands to burn that has the cultural resources we're interested in, because everybody's still a little afraid of fire, and they're a little afraid that it might get away, and they can't risk the carbon credit lands burning. And so we have to be very persuasive in reminding them that if we don't get rid of the brush beneath the big, tall trees that's bringing in the carbon credits, that it's at risk of wildfire. And so we have been successful in working with the formal tribal structure in burning in and near the carbon credit lands, and we have a very, very low tree mortality rate. So
And
it's
and
working out.
and I think Matt, when I talked to him, he mentioned too that they're buying up more land too for that used to be tribal land.
Right.
And I don't know how it got out of your control, if it was taken over somehow or sold or contracts or that kind of thing. But it's good that you guys are getting your land back, because I'd rather have you guys to be taking care of the land than like some of these other people, that's for sure. Because I think you're doing a lot with helping the salmon as well. You have I know that that was like part of your program, and we're very supportive of salmon. I actually love to eat wild salmon. I'm really jealous because you probably get that a lot. You
Oh
probably,
yeah, I have some in the fridge. I had for lunch yesterday.
oh yeah, I'm very jealous. And that wild salmon is like, it is like so much different than farm salmon. I tell people never, ever, ever order, buy, eat farm salmon. It's full of so many nasty things, and you're not even getting all the omega 3s and all the good stuff that you whole reason you eat salmon. So you guys just really help to maintain that that structure of a forest where you have the animals, the insects, because I've heard of these like tree plantations that the logging industry has created, where they grow these trees like a farm, and they spray all kinds of pesticides because they don't want anything to grow but the tree. So anything else growing on the floor of the ground, they want to kill it. And
Right.
and then they want to have GMO trees, which will actually secrete their own poison.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so if something lands on the tree, they're going to die. I,
Oh my gosh.
I just can't even believe it. Yeah, they have meetings.
It's
You can look it up. They have
crazy.
organizations that are working on these genetically engineered trees. And this is
Wow.
just for the logging industry. And what's crazy is it takes years and years and years to grow a tree, and we could grow industrial hemp instead. And you get a new crop every three months. And you can,
Wow.
and all these things you do with wood, you can do with hemp for way
Hmm.
cheaper, and we don't have to sacrifice our forests. And the logging industry, it's like they never stop. They wanted to go cut down trees in like the redwoods and take these other forests. Like they're just so greedy and so hungry, That's why I don't have very much respect for the logging industry at all. You can probably tell. They're spraying all these pesticides. They can never have enough. They just can't leave it alone. With these
Well,
other
one,
trees. Well, we have like 2 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we get in where people can find out more about your program or contact you if they have any questions.
well, we actually have a website now. We just got it up. I think
Woo!
it's up to the public, and it's culturalfire.org.
Okay, culturalfire.org.
.org, right?
Okay. And
So
so just go there and like they can call you, or are you guys going to be doing another training coming up?
we're actually going to be doing one in the spring, in probably March or April. We haven't set the date yet. But spring and fall is our traditional burn windows, early fall and spring. So we'll be burning again in the spring for hazel.
Well, if I'm coming up that way, I'm going to probably be giving you a call, Margo, because I want to come
So
and
that
see where
would
you
be
live.
awesome.
I
Yes,
would love to come and see it firsthand. And I just want to thank you so much for being a guest on our show
right.
today. I have
And
enjoyed this conversation. I've learned a lot, and I just really appreciate all you guys are doing.
thank you so much. And my email is margo@culturalfire.org. Our executive director is bob@culturalfire.org. And our other person is Elizabeth@culturalfire.org. That's our email.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And everyone, thank you for tuning in to Smart Health Talk right here on KCAA 1050 AM and 106.5 FM. And we'll be back again next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. I hope you'll join us and find us on social media, because we're all over the place on social media. And please go check out Margot's program at culturalfire.org and tune in. And we just put a new video on YouTube too that about how there's no safety testing on GMOs. So please go check out that. All right, we'll be back next week. Bye.
Make sure you use your smart. Take a walk on